Alright, so now we're at the point where we want to cap these pieces, and capping it is not as hard as you might think it is. There's kind of a method you could use, and that makes it very easy. What we're going to be doing is just basically gluing the pieces onto this piece of plastic, like this. Now these aren't glued yet, but it's basically smother the piece in glue, be very liberal with the amount of glue you use, and just stick it on. When we're done and the glue is all dry, we can cut out the pieces individually and work with them from there. However, before you glue the pieces, what we're going to want to do is sand this surface. You can see how this surface is very smooth and shiny. You want to sand it so that it's nice and rough. And the reason for that is because two smooth surfaces won't stick together with glue. The glue doesn't have anything to grab onto. So if we sand it nice and rough, the bond between the piece and the cap will be much, much stronger. Okay, so that, as you can see, is a lot rougher. It's going to stick to the pieces a lot better, and of course you're going to want to sand the pieces as well. And the reason for that, again, is because you want it to stick, and also you want it to be nice and level. My pieces are already nice and level though, so I think I'll just skip that step. It's not really necessary.
Since Lance's tools cut every piece perfectly, he's going to be skipping this step. However, if your pieces don't look quite as good, make sure you take enough time and shape the pieces so that they stick to the plastic nice and tight.
The two-part epoxy is really nice because it gives you a little bit of an added bonus in that you don't have to start working with it right away. So what I usually do is I squeeze them out separately. And try to make sure that there's exactly the same amount of both parts. I see right now that I have a bit more of the light gray, so I'm just going to take a little bit of it away. One last thing that's very nice about two-part epoxy, and one of the real benefits to using it, is that I could leave this here all day. This is never going to dry. Basically, if you set it up like this, it gives you as much time as you want to get all your stuff ready before you actually start. When you're ready to start, all you have to do is mix the two parts together. Now once you start doing this, you only have about 5 minutes to work with it before it gets hard. And once it gets hard, you're just going to have to make a new batch. So mix it together so it looks like one uniform color. So that looks pretty good. And this is exactly what we want. And then you can use a toothpick just to smear it on your pieces and then stick the pieces down. So as you can see, this piece is got a lot all the way around. On every part that's going to touch the plastic, I got glue there. So let's stick this down. Don't push it down hard. Just put it down and give it a bit of a little push. No harder than you'd push a key on a keyboard. For the edges, we have this extra little bit of a square. Make sure you get some glue on there too. Okay, so when you're done gluing all the pieces, take your piece of paper, fold it in half, and put it directly in a garbage can. If this lands on the floor, your parents will kill you. Make sure you get rid of this right away. We basically just gotta wait until it dries. We'll give it, it says an hour on the thing, but we'll give it 2 hours just to be safe. Okay, so the epoxy's had some time to dry. You can basically do a little check by taking a toothpick and poking at some of the epoxy that's exposed, and if it's hard, like really hard, then you know it's dry.
If you start moving the pieces before the glue is completely dry, you'll monkey everything up and it'll take a lot of work to fix it. See the video description for instructions on how to fix this, even though you shouldn't be fixing it because I just told you not to do that. So it's a good idea to give the pieces at least 24 hours to dry. Be patient now and you'll save a lot of time later.
So basically at this point we're just going to cut out all these pieces so they're separate from one another, and then we can change the shape of the cap so that it fits a lot nicer. You'll see what I mean. So just to kind of show you, we're just going to cut them out Not exactly, because then you have the chance of accidentally popping the piece off, but kind of cut it out so that the pieces, or the cap is oversized, and then we can fix that later. Once we have the cap to the right size, there's going to be nothing to grab that will pop the cap off. So it'll be really safe when the cap is the right size. At this point though, if I were to give this a good tug, the piece would probably pop off. So until the caps are the right size, there is a danger of the pieces coming off of the plastic. So yeah, at this point I'm just going to cut these out. Alright, so at this point all of the pieces are cut out, as you can see, and the cap for the piece is far oversized. That's something that we want though. All we want to do is cut them apart so that they're individual and easier to work with. Once you have all the pieces like this, you're going to try to sand them so that the cap is flush with the piece. So I've done this, or I've done part of this piece, and you can kind of see what I mean. Do this to every side of every piece, and when you're done, you're pretty much done the puzzle.
Sand the cap of every piece into its proper shape. Since the caps are so oversized, it may be difficult to sand through all of the extra material by hand. If this is the case, you can just use your Dremel's sanding drum attachment for most of this rough work. However, when you get closer to the right size, switch back to sanding by hand. This will make your puzzle look much more smooth and professional than it would have if you just used the Dremel for the whole thing.
Alright, so this is some time later. I've managed to cut out all the pieces and sort of start sanding them a bit, but still far from done. Let's just see how this looks now. Should be able to get basic shape of this. Let's kind of see what our progress is so far. So we have the barrel shape. You'll notice that everything's lining up very nicely. Could be better, which is where the sanding comes in. And other than that, this is almost a finished mod. Now, the things that I'm noticing right away are that since the caps have a certain thickness, they're about 1 millimeter thick, or just under, yeah, let's call it a 1/16 of an inch. They do add a bit of height to the piece, so you'll notice that they seem a bit taller than the unmodified edges. What we're going to do to cure that is just to sand these corners flush with the edges. If you don't understand what I mean, you'll see when I do it. But just sand them so they're flush. And really, these pieces are a lot flusher than I thought they'd be. Really, there's not much I have to do for this. One thing that I'm going to have to do though is that the plastic I used has a sort of texture on it, and my stickers won't stick to that texture very well. So I'm going to sand that off and then sand the edge here so that it is flush with these pieces. And other than that, there's really not much else to do. Okay, so more problem solved in that we have taken the texture off of the plastic. I've rounded it off so that it feels very flush all the way around. Now what I want to do is actually take it apart, because at this point the puzzle as a whole is the right shape. Everything's pretty good. What I want to do now is take it apart and give each individual piece some special attention. And for this, no secret, just you're going to want to focus on the seam between the cap and the piece itself, and in my case, where I sanded that texture, I'm going to want to focus on the face of the cap as well.